Is Bradley Barcola the right fit for Liverpool? And is he going to block Rio's pathway? That's what we're going to discuss today. But before I start, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone that subscribed, that liked my last video, that watched it, even the few that commented. It's slow progress, but we're getting there. Also, a massive shout out to everyone that's been engaging with me on Twitter for the last week or so. Anyone that knows me knows that I will, I just talk football all day. I'm chronically online. So yeah, man, a massive thank you. I don't really have an aim for where I want this channel to go. I just want to keep putting out content. So this is my second video this week. So it's, consistency is key. And that's what I'm going to keep doing. Listen, transfer season is an exciting time. And, it's kind of got a life of its own, hasn't it? Away from, the main season where we're just discussing what's happening on the pitch. But the off the pitch stuff is, it's exciting, man. Anyone that kind of grew up in the FIFA manager era or, football manager, it's, we all thought we knew best and we knew who the new up and coming players were going to be. So it's exciting. It gives us something to talk about whilst we can't watch Liverpool on the pitch. So a massive thank you. So if you could just like, share, subscribe this too. Follow me on Twitter, man. My details are in my bio. So yeah, follow me. Listen, I follow back. I'm not one of those geezers that's trying to get a specific ratio or whatever, man. I'm not into all that. I just want to discuss football. I like seeing other people's opinions. I like discussing other people's opinions as well as my own. It's important to have conversation, and that's what I'm trying to build. Just a community where we can actually have conversation. It's not all about me, behind the camera saying what I think's best, but I'm going to give my opinion on why I think Barcola is the right fit for Liverpool, and if there is alternatives. But let's start with Bradley Barcola. Apparently, he's not going to sign a new deal. He wants more minutes. He's a bit disappointed in not starting in the big games, which is, it's fair enough. He's 22. He came with, quite a promising reputation when he left Lyon. He probably wanted to stay in France and he picked PSG. There was a lot of interest in England for him as well when he was leaving Lyon. Liverpool were one of those clubs, and we know when Michael Edwards likes a player, they'll always be on the radar. So apparently he's still on our radar. Apparently we are interested. The news is very quiet in terms of Liverpool journals this summer. It seems like they're keeping their cards very close to the chest. A lot of the news has been from outside, maybe more from, Germany or France, when we're talking about Yan Diomande. It doesn't seem like, I don't want to talk about Yan Diomande too much, but it doesn't seem like PSG is going to happen or that they're going to be part of the conversation. So that's exciting for us. But it seems like PSG are very central to what we want to do this year. So with Barcola, listen, I understand the concerns. I want to just talk about the concerns before I start. People are talking about his finishing. I'm of the belief that you can improve, and his numbers are actually very, very good. I think if I'm right, in his first season, he scored 20 and assisted 20 or something very, very similar to that. Over the last 2 years, he's got about 60 GA. And I understand it's the French league. However, I don't think the French league is as weak as people are kind of describing it. And I think people assume it just based on the fact that PSG tend to win the league most years. However, when we're talking top talent, the French market it's ripe right now. There's so much out there, and you're getting, no disrespect to the Premier League players, but I feel like you're getting better value for your money. With these young, promising players. And Barcola is one of them. And listen, he's going to be expensive. There's no doubt about it. I don't know the full price, what he will cost, but you can imagine it's going to be around the 70, 80 mark, if we're being fair. And I think if he probably played more, you're probably talking about 90 to 100. But considering his role within that squad, that's probably the price we're talking about. And I think that's a fair price for the talent and what he offers. First of all, we spoke about the concerns, the clinical nature of Bradley Barcola. I think that's what's causing that split in the fan base when we're discussing this player. I don't think it's that concerning just based on the numbers that I've said. I would like to look a little bit more into the data, and obviously I should have probably done that before I got on video and spoken about it, but data's not my forte. Like it's, I go off the eye test and, and some of the basic numbers that we can see. I think when we're talking about his clinicalness, I think a lot of people could be basing that on the Champions League final. He went through on goal at a clinical, crucial time, and the clinical nature just wasn't there. And I think that's fine because, he's proven that he can put up the numbers and he has scored and assisted in big games. However, again, I think it's something that can be improved upon. People are going to talk about Darwin Núñez and, how he didn't improve, but Núñez was just, he was something else. I don't really want to talk about Darwin too much now. There's been a lot of chatter about him as well. Maybe he should come back and so on and so on. And maybe I'll discuss that at some other point in another video. But every player is different. Everyone adapts to coaches differently. We saw Núñez under two coaches, under the great Jurgen Klopp, and then under Arne Slot, who, and Núñez played a role in winning the league that year, but I'm just talking about the improvement in finishing. Núñez didn't show that he could improve. However, we don't know that Barcola is going to show the same thing. Listen, he's a 22-year-old kid. He's not playing on a consistent basis. Players, especially young 22, 23-year-olds, they need rhythm. They need consistent minutes. Of course, you're going to get, your freaks of nature that just are natural finishers who only need one chance and it's in the back of the net, who don't need, they can just make a substitute appearance and, they're popping up at the back post and, before you know it's a goal. However, some players need rhythm, and I feel like Barcola could be one of those players. He's disappointed in not starting the big games, but look who he's up against. Kvara is a freak of nature. Barcola is not getting him out of the team. You're talking about arguably the best player in the world. I think if it wasn't a World Cup year, I think you're talking about probably the Ballon d'Or winner. I think he's that good. And, the only other competition he's got is Elise. So it could just come down to, the World Cup year. And, I can't see Georgia winning it, but if France don't win it, the Ballon d'Or race is kind of open. But yeah, Barcola, man, and he's not going to have a consistent run of games at PSG. He's going to make a lot of bench minutes. He's going to start, random games against, he wants to play in the big games and he wants to be starting week in, week out. And that's probably why he's ready for a move. I'll be very, very surprised if he doesn't leave this summer. We know Arsenal are interested in him. And let me tell you something, if Arsenal sign him and he does well, I don't want to hear we should have signed him. Liverpool messed up. What were Hughes and Edwards doing? Listen, I've seen some of you do not want him. And you know what, that's fine. We're all entitled to our own opinion. And that's what makes football so fun. Listen, there's no right answer. We don't know how a player is going to be until we see them in that red shirt, on a consistent basis. Okay, but let's talk about his strengths. I feel like we've spoken about his weaknesses. However, that's not concerning to me. I think everything that I've I'm going to outline here is proof that why I believe he would be a good player. First of all, he's a 1v1 specialist. This guy can skin you inside out. He will take you on the inside. He'll take you on the outside. And that's such a good trait in what Liverpool need right now. I don't want to talk about Cody Gakpo too much, but there was a little bit of news about him as well, potentially wanting to leave, or Liverpool potentially being open to offers, even though they kind of downplayed it. But the way the article was written, it was very similar to the Luis Diaz one last year. But with Diaz was predictable. Bradley Barcola is unpredictable. And those are the kind of wingers I want us to sign this year. I don't want to know what this player is going to do next, other than it's going to be positive. And Bradley Barcola has got that in abundance. Like I said, he can take you on the outside and he can whip it in. Or he'll take you on the outside and then beat you again to get on the inside. He's an excellent carrier of the ball, and he crashes the box when he's dribbling. That is such a good trait. It's perfect for what Liverpool need. It's kind of reminiscent of, I know a lot of Liverpool fans might not want to talk about him, but Raheem Sterling, what he used to do at City, he's a very good dribbler, and he arrived into the box with the ball or without the ball. And what that does is it casts some doubt in a defender's mind. They don't want to engage with you in the box. They want to try deal with you before you're able to set foot in the box. The obvious is because they might give away a penalty, but also they might give you a goal scoring opportunity, or you might be able to pick out your teammate, and that is a defender's worst nightmare. Alongside another trait which I think he has, which is his ability to play on the shoulder. We saw it in the Champions League final. Yes, he didn't finish that particular chance, but you're talking again about a very, very good Arsenal team, and it kills me to say that, but let's face it, you don't win the Premier League and get to the Champions League final if you're not good. And the way Arteta sets up, he's made them very, very defensively hard to break down. So Barcola likes to get on the shoulder a lot, but he's also very good in the build-up. And I think that's so positive for us because, again, it's that unpredictable nature. Defenders don't want to chase you. They don't want you to be on their shoulder because the chances are you've got the pace that this guy has. They're not going to be able to keep up. And if they are able to, okay, they might be able to nick a challenge. They might foul you. It's a defender's worst nightmare. And again, that's another skill that he's got in abundance. It's that lightning pace, beat you on your shoulder or drive at you. And like I said, when he crashes the box, the fact that he could take you on the left or take it on the right, it's a defender's worst nightmare. They do not want to engage with you. And it's these minor details that I think we're maybe overlooking. We can focus too much on the output, which of course is very important. But like I've said before, the output monsters are not attainable this year. If you're looking at Elisa, you're looking at north of 150 million. And then if he is for sale, there's going to be a lot of competition. And of course, there's going to be competition for Barcola as well. But considering the amount of work we need to do this year, one of those output monsters, first of all, I don't think any of them are attainable. And if they were, the money they're going to cost is going to be ridiculous. And I think we'd be able to afford it in any other summer. But because of the amount of work this squad needs, it's so unlikely. But again, with Barcola, he picks out his teammates very, very well too. I think he does very, very, very well in the assist numbers. And that's what we want from the wingers. And I spoke about this a few times now. I think one of the things the club noticed was, to kind of go back to the output monsters, is because they're not attainable, the next batch of up and coming players, or the players in the tier below them, are not able to match those kind of numbers, if that makes sense. So when we brought in Isak and Ekatike, I feel like the vision was for these guys to be putting up the majority of the goals, with the wingers just contributing. We were spoiled in the past with Salah and Mane, who were able to put up silly numbers year in, year out. But I feel like the club's slightly changing the way they want to play. I do think the wingers of course, they're going to contribute, in terms of goals. But I think the assists are going to be more important from the wingers this year. And you can kind of see that it might make more sense when we go into next season now. Whereas, we felt the wings had been a bit neglected last summer. So maybe that's one of the reasons why it looked a little bit disjointed on the pitch, as well as obviously tactical setups and systems, etc. But I think that is going to be one of the main focus. The wingers getting the balls to the striker rather than the striker getting the ball to the wingers, like we saw with our famous front three, Firmino, Mane and Salah. And, I've spoken about, his ability to crash the box. That's such an underrated trait. You don't see many players, I think, these days that are able to just dribble into the box. And it sounds so simple when I'm putting it like that. But just watch this kid, and he's able to do it again and again. And defenders do not like it. But let's talk a little bit about off the ball as well. This guy works hard. He presses the ball. If you play for Luis Enrique, you have to put in work off the ball. There's no disputing it. Yeah, just look at the way that PSG team play. They all contribute. They put the team first. They are pressing monsters. And again, this is what we're going back to. It's kind of become part of our DNA, especially from the Klopp era, and then we kind of lost it under Arne Slot. But this seems to be the way we're going back. We're going back to. So don't don't get it confused. Like, this guy will work his ass off. He'll do the dirty work as well as be excited when he gets on the ball, and that's what we want from our players. I think we were spoiled under Klopp, with the work rate, and I don't think we took it for granted because so many of us still speak about it, and it's been a constant conversation over the last 18 months. But that's something that he will contribute to, and it's going to be so important in an Iraola system. The players are going to have to work hard. They're going to have to defend. They're going to have to do what's best for the team, and that's what we want. We don't want selfish players at Liverpool. We want players where everyone is contributing when they get the ball and when they're off the ball. Again, even on the ball, his link-up play is very, very good. Just imagine the sort of 1-2s he's going to be able to play with Florian Wirtz. Wirtz is going to be so integral to the way this team works this season. If we provide him with the wingers, we're going to see a different version of him. We're going to see a different version of him anyway, just based on the setup. But what so many of us spoke about last season was, look who he's lending the ball to. He's lending the ball to somebody who's probably not the most technically gifted footballer, in Cody Gakpo, and I'm not going to disrespect him. I think he's a good player. However, I don't think he's a player that should be starting week in, week out for a club like Liverpool. I think he's a very good squad option who should be able to come in and do a job. But I'm just imagining a team or a left-hand side where Florian Wirtz is going to have a free role, so he's going to regularly be able to link up with either winger as well as the strikers. So whoever our left 8 is going to be, there's talks of the midfield options are crazy right now, and I do think we need a lot of profiles, or we need to cover all profiles. But let's just use Curtis Jones as an example. I feel like when Jones and Wirtz were playing together, that little trifecta of Kerkez, Jones and Wirtz was probably the best spell that we saw from Florian Wirtz actually last season. But just imagine that now with Kerkez, Barcola and Wirtz, as well as whoever the left 8 is going to be. It could be, we might not have a left 8, it might be Adam Wharton from deep, for example. But whoever is playing those balls into Wirtz, it's, first of all, his touch is it's incredible. But Barcola's is too, and he seems very, very intelligent in terms of sharing the ball with his teammates. He knows how to pick them out, and he seems comfortable receiving the ball under pressure. And Wirtz is going to put the ball either to your feet, he's going to put it behind, and Barcola's got the pace to get in behind. He's got the control to receive it to feet in tight areas. And there's going to be games this season where we're not going to see the exact Iraola setup from Bournemouth, based on the fact that teams are going to sit back against Liverpool, whereas against Bournemouth, they might be a little bit more open. And we're going to need those players that can receive the ball in tight areas, back to goal, facing the defenders, either one. Someone that's able to dribble at the defenders. And Barcola's got this in abundance. And I think that, it's a long way of saying, I think a player like that is going to help Florian Wirtz do what he needs to do for the team. Like I said, we're going to see a completely different side to him because we know we're actively looking for wingers. But yeah, and I think Barcola is the perfect fit. I've seen a lot of people talk about Torre, who's also from the Ivory Coast. He looks like he's got blistering pace. However, his finishing isn't exactly clinical either. And it's a smaller sample size, whereas with Barcola, we've seen him perform at a top club. Yes, he's not playing consistently in terms of starting games, but again, look who he's up against. So we've got to look at sample sizes as well. Like, I don't want too inexperienced wingers, because Diamande, as good as I think he is also inexperienced. Like, he's not playing for one of the big boys. He's playing for Leipzig, and he's done a very good job there. And, they've got a fantastic setup. The way they bring players through, it's absolutely admirable. And it's a setup that works for them. And the players know they can go there. They're going to improve. They're going to get minutes. And Leipzig also won't hold them back from getting a big move. So that's why it's an attractive proposition to players. But I don't want to go into next season with two inexperienced wingers who haven't quite cut it at a big club before. Barcola has played for a big club. PSG are 2 times back-to-back Champions League. Well, yeah, they've won the Champions League back-to-back. They clearly want to go for a third time. They want to do the 3P, and the way they've been playing, they really might do it. But Barcola wants a chance, man. He wants a chance to be starting week in, week out at a big club. So if that's at Liverpool, I'm all on board, man. I think it's a no-brainer. As for Rio, I don't think it's going to block his pathway. Look, listen, Rio is going to get more minutes this year. It's criminal that he didn't get more last year. But also, I don't want to burn this kid out. He's not even 18 yet. And we've seen what happens to players when you give them too much too soon. Just in terms of injuries, I want this kid for the next 10 years. I don't want him for the next 2 or 3. There's, you look at Gavi at Barcelona, he started very, very young, playing consistent first team minutes. And then, he's had bad injuries. Camavinga, he's another one. He was playing at, I think it was Rennes at 17. And, look at him, he's slowly finding a little bit more consistency in terms of fitness. But over the last 2-3 years, he's missed a lot of football. And it can just be that your body as a child is not meant to be playing that amount of minutes. So we need to give Rio the best chance to grow, to come in and out of the team. We know Rio can, if we need him to, he can play on the right. Rio is going to get minutes next season. I'm not concerned about that. And I think any links that are kind of linking him with a move to Bayern, I just think it's his team, it's his camp that want assurances that he's going to be playing next season. Because we saw last season about last summer, where reports were coming out about blocking Rio's pathway, and we hardly saw him play. For a lot of the season, it was little 5-minute cameos here and there, and he probably felt hard done by because Gakpo wasn't exactly performing. And we started to see him more and more at the end of the season, and maybe that's where those links have come from. Maybe it was from earlier in the season where his camp's just kind of seen what's out there, maybe put the pressure on Liverpool, and I would do whatever it takes to keep this kid at the club. I think he's special. He might be a once-in-a-generation, Liverpool academy player, but he is able to keep up with the big boys. He's able to play with lads that are, 5, 6, 7 years older than him, and he doesn't look out of place. Of course, he's going to work on his fitness, but I don't want to put too much pressure on him. He's 17. We should be able to put him in the team and also take him out, and hopefully, he seems like a good kid, and I'm sure he knows that as well. Like, he just probably wants assurances that he will be considered for minutes this year on a regular basis. However, he's that special that he will be playing. Before I sign off as well, I want to talk a little bit about Cody Gakpo. There was an article, there was a couple of articles that came out yesterday. There was one that basically said that, he's handed in a transfer request. He's told the club he wants to leave. That was later shut down by Ben Jacobs. So it basically says Cody Gakpo hasn't told Liverpool directly he wants to leave. However, and that's a key word, there's been recent interest in Gakpo from Italy and Bayern from last summer. Liverpool are not actively looking to sell and have noted the fee on Anthony Gordon's 17 million Barcelona move, which would inform their valuation. Gakpo is well contracted until 2030. That article doesn't, to me, say he's not for sale. It seems that Liverpool are very, very open to it if the right fee comes in. There's links to Spurs. And with respect to Spurs, he'll probably be a good signing for them. Spurs just need to get back to some form of consistency. And Gakpo's not going to give you consistency in terms of goals, but he's a good player for probably where Spurs are at right now. I think Cody Gakpo's been a good squad player for us, and I think at this level, that's probably where he's at. I don't think he should be a consistent starter. I think he should just be able to come in, to cover injuries as a sub, to play cup games, and start the odd game. Listen, he is a good player. He's just not a great player, and I think there's a difference, and it's okay to be good. The issue last season was he shouldn't have been our starter, if we're being serious. And I think based on that article, I think that means the club's open to selling him. We kind of saw a similar one with Luis Diaz last summer, and it seems very reminiscent of that. And listen, Liverpool have got a lot of work to do this year, so we're going to have to rely on player sales. I do think the money's there as well, but considering the amount we have to do, we might need to cash in on players. And I think for Cody Gakpo, you're looking at 60 to 70 million. I mean, you know, he's a Premier League winner. He's won a couple of cups. You know, Anthony Gordon's, I think he's a good player, but is he 80 million? But, you know, the market is cooked. The market is absolutely cooked this year, and players have just gone for an absolute premium. So I think Liverpool were very smart last year when they got him to sign a new contract. And I said at the time when he signed the contract, was it in the summer or was it in what season was going on? Either way, I said at the time, it was just to protect his value. And people are saying, oh, no, you know, we wouldn't have got him to sign a contract if, you know, we wouldn't sell him. You know, he just signed a new contract. I'm saying that, listen, Liverpool have to act smart now. We've let players go on a free too many times. We're letting players go on the cheap because, you know, they might only have 18 months on their, you know, their deal, or a year. Realistically, I think if Luis Diaz had an extra year or 2 years on his contract, I think we would have got more for him. But I think we got a fair fee, you know, considering the market at the time. But maybe we sold the wrong player. The issue was we weren't going to give Diaz the wages. Yeah, so if Cody Gakpo leaves, listen, it leaves Liverpool with a lot of work to do, because that's another player that we have to replace, you know, in terms of squad additions. But I'd be interested to know who you guys think is a good squad addition, or, you know, if you don't rate Barcola, who would you have instead? I've seen people, shout out my friend Billy, you know, he's an elite scout, man. You know, he just does this in his spare time. You know, it's fun for him, and he's got like a dossier of players that he rates. So I'm actually going to make my way through it and, you know, do a few player reviews. I've checked out a few players that he recommended. To be fair, he recommended Fernandez Pardo. He also recommended, is it Ezazuli, plays for Betis. I think he's got a release clause of about 50, 52 million. And they look like good players as well. So I do want to have a little look more into other options. But you guys tell me, man. Like, listen, I'm always looking for new players to check out. Like, I'm not as clued up as I used to be. However, I'm getting back into the swing of things in terms of, you know, players from abroad. I have less time, but I'm making the time. Whereas back in the day, you know, when we were kids and we were playing FIFA, we were very, very aware of who was up and coming, and, you know, we used to be on the blogs all the time. But it's hard to keep up these days, man. There's so many players that people rate, and I also don't want to. I want to watch enough of them to give a fair opinion, because I know some people have also recommended Toure, from the Ivory Coast. However, I've not watched loads of him. I've just watched a few comps or a couple of comps, and I don't think that's enough to give a fair evaluation on the kind of player he is. You know, other than the basic surface level, you know, that I still think he's a little bit inexperienced. And listen, he might be a great option if we don't get Barcola off the line, but Barcola is the one for me. So you guys tell me, man, who's your first choice? Is it Barcola? Is it somebody else? Is there a hidden gem that you know about? But also, who else would you add to that forward line? Because we do need players, man. Ekatike's out for the season. So I'll be interested to know. I'm going to do another video right after this as well about midfield options. So we'll put that out at some point. But yeah, please like, share, subscribe, comment. Like I said at the start of the video, man, I engage with everyone. So if you comment, if you shout me on Twitter, I will talk to you. I will get back to you. I just love talking about Liverpool and what we're going to do. Where else can you find me? I'll be on BNR again, Born and Red, that is. Check the guys out. I know most of you probably have come over from that channel because I'm on there. Well, last week I was on there a lot. And we'll see what days I'm going to be on this week. But Thursday's my normal concrete day with them. But, you know, they're busy, man. Shout them guys, because, yeah, they're killing it. They're putting out so much content. So please go check out them as well, man. And, you know, they're giving opportunities to, you know, young creators, you know, people that are just starting off in the content creation game. So they're good lads, man. So please go check out their channel as well. And yeah, and that's it for me. So I'm going to go work on the next video. I'm going to put this one out, and then I will put out the midfield one. So thank you, man. I'll see you guys soon.